Hey everyone, it's Kirk here again at Option Alpha. So this is part 4 of my series of behind the scenes for my one DTE strategy that I went through the whole process of backtesting, finding a strategy, and now running the strategy live. So we've only got about 30 trades, but I wanted to jump on and kind of review the performance of the bot so far, kind of give you my feelings, my take on it, because I know that a lot of people, when they start a bot and they start trading, there's this really big excitement period of starting trading, and then the bot starts trading, and you can kind of get into this feeling of like, okay, am I doing the right thing? Is it on the right track? Where am I going with this? So I wanted to jump in here a little bit early in the cycle for this bot and just kind of show you what the bot's been doing, and also refresh where we are with the back test as well. So this is the one DTE strategy that I ultimately decided to trade. I'll put a link to this back test in the show notes so you can check this out for yourself. You can also watch the other videos and kind of watch through the progression of where it is. And so I decided to do this video, one, because it's down a little bit, which is fine, but also because it's just starting to make its first, series of trades. And when I mean just first series of trades, I mean it's done about 30 trades. I think it has one position open currently right now. So it's got one position today. This one looks like it may be okay today, may fall into the range. It's kind of been trading in that range all morning. So it's about on 30 trades. And so what I wanted to do here is just kind of go through the bot, just kind of show you how it's been doing. And then also, like I said, just kind of talk through how I feel about this and how you might feel about it with your bots as well. Because I feel like these feelings are very similar for a lot of traders, and maybe me sharing how I feel about it, expressing this or how I think about it might help you. So if it does, let me know in the comments. So, okay, so we're about 30 trades in. So first of all, the number one thing right now with 30 trades is it's clearly not enough to make a decision. So this is the thing that I think all the time when trading is, I'm very patient and conservative in that I don't mind being, into a strategy and letting it trade 50, 100 trades before I will ultimately make a decision on the strategy. This is one that we back tested inside of Option Alpha, so I feel very confident about the strategy. 30 trades, even if this thing was crazy profitable, crazy loser, probably wouldn't make me adjust anything at this point. So I'm still thinking this is very early in the cycle, but even though it's early in the cycle, this is where that emotional creep starts to come in, where you start to second guess yourself, start to think, well, is there a better strategy out there? Is the grass greener on the other side? And this is that period that you have to kind of get through as a trader where you have enough trades to make the numbers and the probabilities work themselves out. But let's just take a look at where we're at kind of right now. So again, 29 trades. P&L currently is down $422. Not bad considering we allocated, a big chunk of change to it. It's small position sizes anyway, so it's small. Win rate is about 17%. If you remember, and we'll take a look at the back test here, the win rate on this strategy was not a high win rate, so I'm not expecting a 90, 80, 70% winner, but it's a little bit underperforming the win rate. Wins, 5 wins, 24 losses, 6 loses in a row. You can see average loss about $86, average win about 322. Again, those are kind of generally in line with where we might expect the strategy to go at this point. So you can see the trajectory of where the stock or where this position has gone. When we originally started this was June 29th when we had that first turn on for this position. And you can see it's had, a couple little stair-step progressions as we've gone, okay? So when we look at positions and kind of dive into it, like I said, there's one position that's on from yesterday that's going to be, kind of looked at here later today, managed, and then another position will take its place. If we just broadly look at the closed positions, and this is kind of broad strokes, so we can kind of compare and contrast it to, is it doing, kind of what we thought it would do back testing wise. If you look at the, how the performance of the strategy has been, you definitely get these periods where you have full loss on the positions, the premium that you take in, and then you get these pops of return. This is when the strategy hits those middle kind of narrow ranges on these iron condors. So these are iron condors that are pretty narrow, but they do have some pops where you get them. They almost, in a sort of way, kind of behave like iron butterflies to a certain degree. But this is kind of the typical standard. So you get these periods where you have, these loser streak, a couple little losses that are kind of, marginal or on the edge, etc. And then you have these periods where you get these pops, okay? Now, if we take this one step further and we go over to the back test that we have, then you can see this is the back test. Now, I reran this back test to include the most recent data. So as of this morning, basically as of the close yesterday, this is what this backtest is. Now, if you go to the chart here, when we started this strategy, it was like right about here, July 29th, July 30th. So that was right about where we started. I'll try to just draw a little pin here on the chart. So if you look at this chart right now, let me just actually do this. Let me just zoom in here on the actual screen itself. Okay, if you look at this chart, this is when we started the strategy. Whoop, that's probably a bad way of drawing that one. Right there is when we started the strategy. And if you look at it, it's got a little bit of choppiness and downward action. Now, you could probably over psychoanalyze this, but generally speaking, if we just even back tested it now, what we might expect is we might expect some downward to sideways choppy action. So essentially our time period of live trading is this small period right here where in this case the strategy went sideways to slightly down. Again, if you go back to the actual strategy itself and we just look at, let me just zoom out here so you can see this. Actually, it probably looks a little bit better zoomed out. So you can see that's our period right here. If we go back to the P&L chart, this is what our chart is right now. Looks oddly similar to the actual back test that we have from that period, from that July 29th, July 30th period. This is kind of oddly similar to what we've seen in our in our actual trading. So when I kind of look at that, just kind of out of sample time period, right? Live trading next to back tested data, it looks very, very similar. So that gives me a lot of confidence that, hey, overall, like this strategy is behaving the way that it should. It might not necessarily have done the best right out of the gate. Not all the time it does, but it's behaving the way that it generally should from the backtest. Now, this also brings up another important point, which is that we're going to have time periods like this, potentially, like this period here, like this period here, right? This period here, which was kind of sideways and very minimal trading. We're going to have these periods where it just doesn't do well, and that's okay. And some of these periods could last quite a bit. I think it's an important point to remember when you're looking at your back test. A lot of people see this overall trajectory, and then they think that that happens in the first 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 trades, but it just doesn't happen that way. This strategy in this back test is 384 trades. We're only about 30 trades into this, right? So we're going to have to give it time. This is why automation works, because you can just remove your emotional baggage from the day-to-day operation of it and just let the strategy run. But we're going to have time periods where we have to go through potentially a drawdown or a dark night. That's what I call them, like these dark periods where the strategy is running, but it's not necessarily generating the performance that we want. So in this case, this example here, this was March 4th. The strategy was about $6,000. And then it took basically until about June of that same year to come back up to that same range. So you had quite a long drawdown period. So if we're kind of in a little bit of a drawdown, it would be expected, I guess you could say, for us to go through some sideways action for a little bit here before we start moving higher. Okay, let's look at the stats from the backtest again, just to refresh ourselves. Win rate was 29% or 27%. We do have a loss streak here that was 13. Win streak was about 4. Again, if you like directly compare these to where we're at right now, we had wins of 5, loss streak of 24. So we had a little bit longer loss streak in here. And then that, again, number of positions. Win rate was a little bit less here. So that was, kind of out of the ordinary. But again, we should expect to win a little bit more. When you look at our average P&L and losses and wins, the average win was about 307. Average loss was about 87. We can see here that the average loss is about 86. Average win was about 322. So we're right in that range of where we should, essentially be on this test. Okay. So when I look at this, and again, I compare this to the actual back test that I'm running, this really gives me a lot of confidence to just stick with it, let the numbers play out. This is a small strategy. It's just one contract, and it keeps my account active and rolling with a lot of this 0 to 1 DTE start trading that we're doing. So I think at this point, we're still going to be, letting it do its thing, not messing with it. We still leave the automations on. We still let it run exactly the same as it's run before and not make any adjustments to it. So I think the goal from this one, like I said, is just to give you an idea of kind of how I think about things, for that first 30, 40, 50 trades into it. Most of the time, I'm not messing with anything. I'd say I would rarely mess with something unless something crazy off. If this strategy was down 50% and it was winning 1% of its trades, like something's wrong, of course, like something's totally out of the ordinary. But compared to the back test, it's about basically where it should be. It's about the same as expected. So we're just going to keep let it going. As always, we'll give you guys an update on where this is, maybe at the next, major series of trades, maybe say 100, 150 trades. I'll come back in here, do another behind the scenes and take a look at it then. But as always, I hope you guys enjoy these. If you have any comments or questions, let me know. And until next time, happy trading.